John Whittle with the Big Spur. Nobody covers him better. He joins us as he does every Monday. Hey, brother. Oh, can't hear you. I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear your voice. Maybe you nope, still can't hear you. I know you can hear me, but I can't hear you for some reason. Maybe it's a setting or something like that. We'll get that we'll get that figured out. And Mike should be along here just a little bit as well. In the meantime, couple of things here. It is another big week in college basketball in the SEC, so we want to make sure, in addition to the fact that South Carolina plays tomorrow night against Missouri, as you all well know, the team that has become South Carolina of last year. There are a bunch of other games to keep an eye on. Florida's got to go to Georgia. Georgia looking for a huge upset there. It's a 7 o'clock tip on the SEC network. Mississippi State, they've got Alabama tomorrow in Tuscaloosa. Mississippi State, of course, is in the tournament. Alabama, of course, is vying for a number one seed. But that's a huge, huge game for both of them from a seeding perspective. Tennessee's at LSU. Can LSU pull off a major upset of the Vols? Tigers trying to play their best basketball at the right time of the year as well. Now, you look at their record, and they got no chance as of now. But if you win a couple at the end of the season, they certainly feel like they could be putting themselves into a position there, maybe, to be knocking on the door of the dance. That's how good this league has been this year. You got 11 losses in the SEC, and if you can win a bunch of games down the stretch, maybe you could get in. So it's a big night coming up tomorrow in SEC basketball. Can we hear you now? Nope, still can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. It's Monday, John. This is when these problems generally show up, is on Monday. That's the nature of the beast. Also, was doing some research, and we'll get to this with John just a little bit ago. I did it last night, or first thing this morning, because Oklahoma, after the week that they had in college baseball, has moved into the top 25. The top 25 as of this morning with D1 baseball, who we use, even though Texas A&M got beat yesterday by Cal Poly, they remain at number one. So out of the SEC, A&M's at 1, LSU's at 2, Tennessee is at 3, Arkansas is at 4, Georgia is at 6, Florida is at 8, Vandy's at 14, Texas 15. Now there are the Sooners at number 16. Mississippi State is at 18, and Ole Miss as at number 24. North Carolina is ranked number 5 in the country. Number 5, okay? Carolina's got them in a midweek game coming up here in just a little while. For the Gamecocks, currently, based on where teams are ranked right now, today, they have 27 games. 27 games left versus the top 25. 13 versus the top 5. 16 versus the top 10. And who's to say that the College of Charleston, Auburn, and Kentucky could not all be ranked by the time that they get to them on the schedule? Talking about Carolina here. And, John, the Gamecocks are the only team in college baseball that faces all of the current top 5 programs in the country. They're the only team that faces all of them this year. So it's an 8-0 start. It's been great to get off on the right note for Coach Maneri, but we all know what's coming starting this coming weekend. Oh,
I'm just kidding. That's one hell of a stat for you. That's one hell of a stat there for you, Jamie. That's good.
I can't believe you just did that to me. I can't believe you just did that.
Sorry about that. It might be time for a new laptop.
All good.
But no, it's certainly challenging, and I didn't hear all your numbers, but I heard 27. There's got to be a North Carolina game in there too, right? Aren't they still ranked in the top 25? So,
yeah, they're ranked number 5. That's what I was saying. Yeah. The Gamecocks are the only team in college baseball that plays every team ranked in the top 5.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what they have, this season. But you know what? I guess it's an opportunity to play some big games on a national stage and show everybody what you're made of. I mean, I guess you have to look at these things as an opportunity, and South Carolina's going to have plenty of those for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt, John. We're going to get to basketball here in just a little bit, but it is Clemson Carolina week. I pointed out at the top of the program. Paul Maneri will stop you real quick if you bring that up because they got Gardner Webb tomorrow, and he is very much a day-to-day guy, as we all well know. And they will be focused on tomorrow night's ball game in Columbia to try to improve to 9-0. Clemson had to survive this past weekend against North Carolina A&T, against Virginia Commonwealth. You look across the country, this is going on everywhere. I just pointed out A&M got beat by Cal Poly over the weekend. It could have lost to them twice, probably should have. But they got beat yesterday 3-2 against the Technical Institute from the West Coast. That's kind of embarrassing when you're an Aggie. But Carolina's unscathed. And yesterday ended up being a 10-run rule. They got a bunch of guys in the game. It was a different lineup. John, I'm going to ask you about that here in just a minute. But overall, when you look at this 8-game stretch that they've opened with here, they have had to do something late to secure the victory. Manufacture a run, bring in a setup guy, and then roll out your closer. I think Sweeney actually leads the SEC right now with 3 saves of the 8 wins that they have. They've had to perform late. They've had to play good defense. And I know that these teams are not SEC teams, they're not ACC teams, they're not the College of Charleston. I get that. I understand that. But teams still lose to these teams all across the country. There were 25 losses this week alone in the top 25. 25 combined losses by top 25 teams. So what are they learning here? This group, it's a new group, got a new coach. Through 8 games, having to be tried like that to be able to come out on top. What are they learning about themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can start off with acknowledging that South Carolina is going to lose one of these games eventually to one of these lesser opponents, like most of these other schools have already. But to win the game so far, as you mentioned, most of them being in tight fashion, it builds a little bit of confidence, as Paul Maneri said. When you and I think Ashley Chastain said the same thing too. When you have to battle when you win and have to fight to get it, like you become confident in those situations. So, I think that's certainly a good thing. It tests your mettle a little bit. You obviously want some games like Sunday where you can maybe put up a run rule and have everybody feeling good about what they're doing. But to be able to come out of a series with a couple of close wins is certainly not a bad thing either. So they've made plays in clutch moments, which I think is a big deal. KJ Scobie has made some over at third base from a defensive standpoint, and also come through with a couple of nice hits as well. But you look at guys who haven't really been in it before, like him, for example, or Brendan Sweeney, even though he's a junior college guy, and you get them feeling good and you get them confident. So I think that is certainly a benefit of playing those close games, even though it may not be as sexy as the 14-4 type of game that you saw on Sunday.
All right. Yesterday was a major lineup adjustment. Side note on that, just really, really, really awesome to see Will Tippett get in there and bang around a bunch of them. And I bet he'd like to have that called third strike back because he probably could have had 5 hits in the game yesterday. I mean, he had a big day, and maybe that's earned him some more time. But what did you learn from Coach Maneri about those changes? These are things you want to see now, John. You don't really want to see this stuff in April. You want to kind of know a little bit more of who you are and what you're capable of doing at that point in time. But now's the time to get it figured out. So what'd you learn about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, credit Paul Maneri for being very open and honest about what he does and why he does it. He said about Nolan Naraki being taken out of the lineup on Saturday. Listen, I didn't like the way he was playing defense. He said, there is one thing to make errors, but it's another thing to not do things the right way in making those errors. And he said, I wanted him in front of the baseball. he didn't get in front of those balls when he made errors, and he didn't play it the right way. So we had a conversation, and I let him know my displeasure, and he was back in there on Sunday ready to go from a defensive standpoint, and he holds his guys accountable. But that was one of the reasons. But Jordan Carrion has certainly deserved an opportunity too, with the way he played in the preseason and the build up to this, and he's gone in a couple of times before that for defense and played phenomenally well. He's probably South Carolina's best defensive infielder out of a slew of pretty good defensive infielders. So, but yeah, and Tippett went in there on Sunday at shortstop and performed really well. Made a great defensive play himself towards the 6-hole, and obviously produced offensively. But Henry Kazmir came out. He hadn't been hitting. He's a better hitter than what he's shown, and he hadn't been hitting. So they worked on some things in the cage pregame, and wanted him just to have a day to have an opportunity to get things right without the weight of the game being there that afternoon. So things like that. Thomas McCroy, he's not going to catch every game. He's not Cole Messina. He's not going to catch every game. So they got to figure out who they like between Ryan Bakes and Max Coffer, and that can certainly change over the year. But you got to see what they look like in games too. So, Max is going to catch tomorrow night against Gardner Webb, and we'll see what that looks like. But Ryan Bakes has acquitted himself pretty nicely from a defensive standpoint. He hit the home run yesterday, 419 feet, I think it was, and straightaway center. And he's done, even though the numbers don't show it, he's performed okay offensively too. So, there's just a lot in terms of figuring out, kind of what you got and how it's going to look, and also keeping guys sharp for, when they're called upon. Bo Hollins is
Mm-hmm.
just to give him an opportunity to get out there and play 9 innings. And, I think those things are good.
Yeah, well, it's important for them to know who is capable of doing what now. And then when they get put into these roles down the road, when I just read off what's coming, this is going to be a very stressful year for anybody that follows South Carolina baseball because of who they have to play every weekend. What, through 8 games here, John, what has impressed you the most about this program, maybe that wasn't as impressive last year?
Certainly defensively. It's not only not making errors and making the plays that you're tasked with that are routine, but they've made some great plays too. Anybody who watched the game yesterday saw several highlight reel plays. I joked with Kent Reichert, who does the in-game tweeting clips and puts out the videos, that he did Sports Center's job for him. He clipped out, I think it was 5, at least 4, maybe 5 defensive plays, and called them Sports Center top 10 plays. It's like, yeah, if they're paying attention to you, they don't have much work to do tonight. But that's been what's most impressive. And that's not to say that South Carolina's always been poor defensively in the last few years. They've been okay a lot of times, and they've had some really good players defensively. But the consistency that these guys are playing with from a defensive standpoint has been really nice to see. Excuse me. Admittedly, I didn't watch the Queens game the other night, or at least not all of it. And I noticed this morning that Ethan Petrie had 2 errors in that game. But in everything that I've seen, these guys have been great. They have 5 errors in 8 games, and one of those was a catcher's interference. 2 to Petrie and 2 to Nolan Naraki. So that's a ton of guys playing great defense.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you, because defense is making the routine plays. Certainly is. You have to do that, but when you're able to make the special plays, that elevates you a little bit. And to your point, look, Carolina, one of the staples about this program, they're always known for the big boppers and the special moments and all that stuff. Defense has been like they've been elite defensively for a long time. They've had some years where maybe you would say they weren't as good as other years, but they were still really, really good and capable of making big time plays. The other night, the stuff with Petrie, John, these were fixable things. One of them, he just took his eye off the ball. He was freezing cold. Everybody was cold. He just didn't catch it. It's not like he can't catch. We know he can catch. That's a teachable, coachable moment. It's not like it was this is just a bad player over here or anything like that. As far as the staff goes, let's just start with SQ. My understanding, you probably know a little bit more than I do at this point. My understanding is if he can't go, which I don't know if that's likely or not, Becker will go on Friday. They will move him up. They will move McCoy up. And then if they can get SQ to go on Sunday, then that would kind of be where they are. What have you learned? I know it's back spasms or something like that, but it certainly doesn't seem like any sort of issue they think they're going to be dealing with long term. I mean, they're trying to get him in there this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. And I think everybody will end up moving up a day, whether SQ pitches or not. I think they'll go with somebody different on Sunday if for some reason Dylan's not able to go. But I'm not a I'm not a biologist, but I think they said rhomboid muscle in the right behind the scapula or something like that. That I wasn't feeling great, so he threw a little bit on Saturday before the game, and felt better. And they're going to give him a couple extra days to see what's what, and hopefully he's able to go on Sunday. And if not, I mean, I think it's a Tyler Pitzer day. Maybe you go TBA and see who's needed and who's not. Maybe it's Brandon Stone. I guess they'll figure it out a little bit later on down the line. But I would expect Matthew Becker to go Friday and Jake McCoy on Saturday and go from there with the hopes of SQ going on Sunday.
What type of moment is this for Matthew Becker if he does get the start on Friday, being the frontline guy up there in the upstate at Doug Kingsmore Stadium on Friday night? He's a senior.
I'm sure this is what he's dreamed of for his entire life. I mean, he's grew up a Gamecock, and this is what you want, right? Like to get the ball against your rival, and if the way you've pitched, I mean, you go up there and pitch like that again, and you silence Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Like it's great to go out there and have 8-2, 4-2 out there cheering for you and hearing that roar after every strikeout. But it's also nice to go up to Doug Kingsmore and hear 6,000 fans in silence too. So that would certainly be special for him, and something I'm sure that he would relish if he gets that opportunity. Which I think he'll at least have that opportunity.
John, we got to hit just a quick 2-minute timeout here. We'll do that. Mike will join us on the other side as well, and we'll turn our attention. Don't want to skip over Gardner Webb tomorrow night. Gardner Webb swings it well, and they certainly can walk into the ballpark and really put a damper on things. But because it is Clemson Carolina week, we will turn our attention to that coming up. We'll also hit on some basketball, and then we'll get you out of here early so you can get on with Teddy. We know you got to do that. So give me a quick second. We'll hit a quick timeout. We'll be right back. It is 10:44. Welcome back. The morning show powered by Electric Bikes of Charleston, electricbikescharleston.com. Finally warming up a little bit this weekend if you want to be outside. Electric Bikes of Charleston will help you get out there and cruising at John Whittle type speeds up to 28 miles per hour. Mike joins us now. All right. John, look, again, Gardner Webb is tomorrow, and it's a capable baseball team of walking in. I think Jackson Susie's going to get the start for the Gamecocks. But this is the best rivalry in the country in college baseball coming up on Friday. There's two that I always put in the same conversation, this and Ole Miss and Mississippi State. True rivals, you know what I mean? I know LSU and Arkansas, I get that, but straight up rivals, heated, hated, in-state rivals. There's nothing that compares to these two here. Again, as I mentioned, Clemson ranked 13th in the country, had to survive this weekend against North Carolina A&T and Virginia Commonwealth. That's baseball. It happens. But The one thing, and Mike has said this before, former voice of Carolina baseball, and he's dead on about it. The one thing that doesn't get decided this weekend is your season. You can lose the series and go on and have a magnificent college baseball season and end up where you want to end up in the middle of America. You could sweep this thing and end up having a very mediocre type of year. It's just the way that it works. 2010 is a great example of that when they got beat 19-6, lost the series, and everybody wanted to fire Coach Tanner, and then they won back-to-back national championships those 2 years. So, John, what type of stock do you put in to what is coming up this weekend, starting off in Clemson on Friday night?
Well, it's important. I mean, you can only take away so much from it. I mean, I think you learn about a lot about your team this weekend. You can only take so much away from the results. I think you learn a lot about your team this weekend, especially the way Carolina's got its schedule set up. I mean, no disrespect to Gardner Webb tomorrow night or the 5 previous opponents, but it's nothing. I mean, this is not the highest caliber of competition. So when you go and face a team like Clemson, that's supposed to be top 15, top 10 in the country, whichever poll you look at, then you learn about how you're going to compete against that flight of competition. So Clemson's gone against 3 really good opponents already, and won a couple and got run ruled by another, and so they probably are in a better spot in terms of like knowing these are how my players are going to react on this type of stage. But there's a lot to be said for being 8-0 and going into this and having some guys on the roster who are older and who've been through this series before. So I think South Carolina's in pretty good shape. But I think you learn a lot going into this weekend that or coming out of the weekend that prepares you for what's ahead. And you can make some adjustments next week and be ready to start SEC play.
Hello, Mike.
Good morning.
We've all had technical difficulties today. Don't worry, you're not in your own.
I'm so over it. I'm so over Microsoft, and I'm so over StreamYard and all this garbage. But we got there.
Mm-hmm.
We got there. I didn't want to interrupt the bird. And John, are you literally in the nest with that bird, or is that bird in the background? I feel like you guys are nesting together.
No, it's out there somewhere. I don't know where it is. It's out there somewhere, but it's not right here beside me.
Okay, it'd be a hell of a story if it was. We could just have like a nest. We could show you from the waist down. It'd be like a whole nest around you and birds, and you're feeding them worms in the middle of the segment. It'd be great for ratings. I'm just saying, but
you could probably get that sponsored. Maybe
we could. Yes,
Birds Unlimited.
Yeah, Birds Unlimited. Yeah, we could start selling bird seed and feeders and everything as part of this segment. But no, it's exciting. John, when'd you first start covering this rivalry? I guess for Big Spur.
I mean, I guess probably 2008.
Oh, wait, okay.
Was when it was. I was around a little bit from a media standpoint in 03 and 04, but mainly about 08.
Yeah, so
it's a good year. Gamecocks swept them that year.
In 08?
I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're 4-0 against them.
I think you're right. I called the last one I called was in 09. It was a walk-off. I think D'Angelo Mack.
D-Mac, yep.
I think D-Mac had the walk-off at Founders. That was the last Carolina-Clemson game I ever called. But, I go back to 2000, and we've talked about this before, the importance of – back then it was 2 games.
Right.
And I remember you mentioned Teddy, John, and you can have some fun with this when you do the segment. Teddy and I go back, and we were, in addition to calling the games, I also did the morning show with him that year. And Carolina, of course, gets off to at that time, I don't know, it wound up being 22-0, but at that time before the Clemson series, it was what it was. And same situation, Carolina hadn't played stiff competition. So Teddy, being ever cynical and just trying to be fair about it, said, well, yeah, let's not get too excited. They haven't played anybody yet, Mike. I said, okay, that's fair. And then I think one of the most important games in the recent history of the rivalry was the walk-off from Marcos Rios in an extra inning game. down 2 in the ninth. Trey Dyson gets served a fastball by Clemson's ace, their closer. Was it Boozer?
Thomas Boozer.
Boozer, thank you.
Yeah.
Richland North
And
High School.
Richland North. Yep, that's right.
and Dyson parked one near the railroad tracks over the porch and right at the Sarge. I have the audio somewhere, and it's some of the loudest I've ever heard the Sarge. Obviously, the Miami Miracle, that's a whole other level. But I remember, we don't have a sophisticated, Derek will tell you this, we don't have a sophisticated sound system for college baseball. You basically, as the announcer, the equipment gets hooked up, and you take a microphone and you hang it out over the balcony, and that's your crowd mic.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember that the sound was reverberating through the window and bouncing off the walls, and it was just so damn loud. And then Dyson had another key hit in extra innings, and then eventually Marcos Rios hits a little kind of blooper to left center field, drops, and Carolina won it. And then eventually, a week later or so, won at Doug Kingsmore. And that's when you played 2. And I just remembered that was so important to the program and really Gamecock athletics in general. Then in 01, it goes to 4 games. Tim Whitaker has a game, 3 bombs at Doug Kingsmore.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a career.
Yeah.
How do you outlive that? And then we went to this machination, which I was never a huge fan of. I wanted to see more than 2 games, but I don't like the alternating Wednesdays. And I realize you have to do it. Georgia Tech does it. Florida State does it. Louisville, Kentucky does it, because you don't have a weekend off in SEC play. You got to go 10 straight 3-game series. I think it's a mistake. I think these rivalries, you want to keep them intact, and it should be 3 games, not alternating where I've got my 8th best starting pitcher on the mound. So I love the way that we do it now. 3 games, a true series, my 1-2-3 versus your 1-2-3. I wouldn't mind it later in the year, but since that's not a possibility, I'm glad we've gotten to this point.
Yeah, well, and I think, John, it gives you I'm with you, Mike. I'd rather see it played later when you know more about who you are.
Yeah.
But for where it is, playing a home and home, Whittle, and playing a neutral site, I actually think it generally gives you a pretty honest assessment of who you are coming out of it. Now, if you get beat, you know what you need to do to get better. If you win, you kind of know where things stand. You still know what you need to do to get better. But I think it does give them actually a pretty honest assessment of who they are since they went to that 3-game series like they do now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least an early season look and gives you an opportunity to see how guys react on a big stage. And, obviously opinions can evolve over the course of the year, but after this, you've got a pretty good idea of what you look like right now against great competition going into the start of SEC play. And, as we said, things will evolve over time, but, you get a great idea of who you are and who's going to shine when the stars are brightest and in those clutch moments. Because we talked about clutch moments and what South Carolina's done so far this year. Every pitch against Clemson is a clutch moment. So
Heavy.
It's 27 innings of teeth grinding baseball.
Yeah, and too, guys, the thing that has made this rivalry, why I put it at the very, very top, is because they have played in the postseason. Now, Carolina has owned the Tigers in the postseason, obviously, and that started, back when you were the voice, Mike, in 2002. But they have owned Clemson in the postseason, and then you add in some of the controversial stuff. Clearly, when you say, "Give me some controversy about Clemson Carolina baseball," the bat warming thing always comes up. It's the first thing that gets mentioned every single time. But we can mention multiple other moments where there have just been heat. All that stuff, that's football, basketball stuff that you rarely see in baseball, right? But it exists in this rivalry right here. And you had the postseason matchups that Carolina took it to them, embarrassed them, in Omaha. I mean, you've got all these things that have happened, and that culminates to why the country focuses on this. You're going to see all the big guys here. John, you'll see them. right? You'll see him in every ballpark you go to, D1 and Baseball America and pretty much anybody and everybody else. Somebody will be there wanting to cover this series. At the same time, these two teams always have superstars. And this weekend, Whittle, they're going to have a bunch of superstars. We know who the Carolina guys are, leading with Petrie, Cam Canarella, Kanak, those guys with Clemson. There are always superstars.
Yeah, absolutely. And, some of those guys are performing really well for Clemson right now, and some of them are not. And the same thing can be said about South Carolina. Some of those superstars are, I mean, in South Carolina's case, most of them are performing pretty well right now. But, Clemson's scuffling a little bit. You look at Canarella, and, he's produced some runs, but he's hitting 250. And Kanak is he had a tough start, and his ERA is a little bit more inflated than what you would have thought right now. But it's that doesn't really matter. This weekend, it's if you perform this weekend, it doesn't matter what you did the first two.
All right, one player, not on the pitching staff, but one player offensively that Carolina probably needs to see clicking this weekend to get a series win.
Kennedy Jones.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. He's been okay, but he hadn't been great so far. He was one of the best players coming into this for the Gamecocks this season, and he's got a couple RBIs, and his on base is okay, but you want more than 250 out of him when he's played 8 games against Sacred Heart and Milwaukee and so forth. He's better than what he's shown so far. He's a veteran guy. His brother played football at Clemson. Like, this should be a series that he should be ready to step up for. And heck, I'll even give you a Clemson guy too, that Andrew Shufo dude who almost single-handedly beat the Gamecocks in both of those games last season. I mean, that guy, that was the one difference in the two teams last year was, that Clemson had Shufo, and he hasn't been great this year yet either. He's sitting there right around where Canarella is in terms of offensive numbers, but man, that guy really changed that series last year, so you got to keep an eye on him.
All right. I know you got to get off the air, so final question here on hoops. What, aside from the win, what can Carolina take moving forward after that victory over the Longhorns?
I don't know. Like, even if you win out, like that doesn't really mean anything in terms of of how you view the season. But you just take an understanding like, hey, we were able to finally break through and get that win, and I mean, you take with it a little confidence going into these next couple of games, but I don't know. I don't know what you take from it other than some moments of joy and happiness to finally break that streak. And you want to try to get out of the cellar, and you've got some winnable games ahead. This game against Missouri is going to be incredibly tough, but you got a couple of winnable games after that, and you just try to win as many as possible, and make the most out of what you can.
It'll be good to see Josh Gray, at least the Josh Gray game. We've been building towards this all year. All right,
Josh Gray, Jordan Butler.
Yeah, that's right. Jordan Butler just got his first win ever in the SEC. How about that?
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
He would have been 0-19 plus 0-13.
Yeah, he's like 1-32 as a player in the SEC. I know. All right, John. Wow. Enjoy Teddy Hefner. We'll talk to you after the Gamecocks series, and hopefully it's a good conversation. Hopefully it's fun.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Thank you, buddy.